Welcome back, everyone, to Context for Chaos, and this is part 2 of Barbara Moore's 2023 interview. Enjoy.
Yeah. The 800 numbers, Miss Cleo, I forget, Dionne Warwick and her Psychic Friends Network.
I didn't know Dionne Warwick had a psychic network.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was all very, it was what people wanted and what people still want from a tarot reader. But it was very huckstery. It was very, let's make as much money as we can. It was charlatan like, even though some of the people doing that were probably doing real work, but it was just being handled so badly and people were being exploited. Tarot scholars and people who were serious about it wanted to be accepted and respected. And so, yeah, the psychological approach really pushed a big wedge between what modern tarot readers considered themselves and what fortune tellers were, which we see today. People are like, okay, we spent 20 years believing the secret and thinking we can do whatever we want. And every tarot reading should say, yes, you should make your hobby your job and you will be very abundantly successful. We did that for 20 years and it proved not to be true. So now here we are having to adjust our perceptions to incorporate reality. And so the people who want to call themselves fortune tellers, and that is what they are, want to come back and be able to call themselves that. And they don't understand why the older people in the community, like my age and older, are like, don't call yourself a fortune teller because we had such a bad time back then. But this is a different world now, and fortune teller is not a bad word. And many people are providing that service for people who need it. There should be no stigma on that.
Yes, well, thank you for that. So there is a person I'd like to bring up because I read in your introduction of your tarot spread book that you had a tarot reading from Rachel Pollack.
I did. Several, many, in fact.
Many. I'd love to hear about it. May
Well,
she rest in peace.
yeah, I was gonna say, sadly, she's no longer working amongst us that we know of. I wouldn't doubt that she is working somehow. But yeah, so Rachel and Mary Kay Greer are what the people of my generation of tarot readers would say are the authors of modern tarot. In case your people don't know, after Arthur Waite and the Golden Dawn, there wasn't a ton of work. Then Eden Gray, if you've ever heard of Eden Gray, she owned a bookstore in the late 60s, early 70s, and she sold tarot cards. And her customers wanted books to learn how to read the cards. The only books available were written by those esoteric gentlemen, and they're practically unintelligible. They did not want those books. So Eden went ahead and wrote several beginner books. And those were the books that influenced Rachel and Mary. And then Rachel and Mary, in turn, kind of set the stage for all of us who came after. They brought the personal and the psychological approaches to the cards. So that's the lineage as I understand it.
I did not know that. That is so enlightening, actually, because it does feel like a massive jump from occult philosophy to where we are now. So that actually really clears up a lot.
I know. I actually have just been starting to make sure I try to tell that story when I have a chance because I'm not really on social media, but sometimes I peek into things just to feel like I'm still connected to the world. So I look on Reddit and I look on a couple of Facebook groups and I'm just looking at like the questions from beginners and people's responses. And I'm like, these people don't know. They don't know things. I should tell them the things.
It's so true. There's just like this big void between the writings of the occult philosophers and the modern approach. And most of us know Mary Kay Greer and Rachel Pollack. If I said 78 Degrees of Tarot, it'd probably ring a bell to most of you. But I didn't know that Eden Gray was like a gateway for them to express themselves through tarot. It's interesting. They both draw a lot on occult symbolism found mainly in Rider Waite.
Mhm.
But like you said, they were able to translate it psychologically. So they're no longer just these outside forces or even everyday fated realities. They're now a way to look inward. Their approach is far more accessible to anyone, where the occult approach was more insular, I feel, or closed off. And you're right about how difficult it is to read their work, the guys like Crowley and Waite. I was super influenced by Papoos's book, The Tarot of the Bohemians, but it took everything in me to understand what he was saying. It's almost a different language. And though I got a lot from his instructions on how to read the numbers, I can't really get any more from them because their whole approach to tarot was on the assumption that they were first derived from ancient Egypt, which isn't true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty funny. So, yeah, so 2 things about that then. Well, one is another thing I keep wanting to tell people is because people keep saying, "Well, what's the traditional? What's the real? What's the original?" And I'm like, "Oh, honey, it's all made up. We all made it all up."
Thank you. Yes, that's the real history of tarot. Okay, really quick, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the history of tarot, here's an incredibly quick overview. So, playing cards came first, and they have a whole history all the way back to like the ninth century in China. And then they evolved into playing cards, and then a deck was created around the 1500s that added 22 trumps, or what we call now major arcana. And that deck was mostly used in France to play a more elaborate trick-taking game called tarot. So in the 1700s, this French guy named Jablon saw the Tarot du Marseille deck, the most widely used deck for playing the card game tarot, and he saw it for the first time when he was asked to join in on a game of tarot. And he was so taken by the trump cards that he declared, 15 minutes after he saw them, he declared, "You fools, this is an ancient Egyptian relic. It was brought to us by those we've nicknamed gypsies, and it holds all of the secrets of the world." So that's how the occult scrutiny began on false history. And if anyone wants to know more about the history of tarot, go to the first episode. You'll learn all about it. But the fact that it's man-made doesn't, in my opinion, make it any less magical or soothsaying.
That is, like, the real magic right there because you said, like, it holds all the world's knowledge. I think that's true, but all the other stuff completely made up. Then the other thing, I had an interesting experience this past year. So in the past, I've tried to read Arthur Waite as one does and put it aside because that's what you do. And I was referencing it for a book I'm working on now. And almost 30 years of experience, plus I'm old enough now, I don't care what anyone thinks. And I'm reading Wait, and I'm like, "Oh my god, such a misogynist, such a horrible person." Yeah, which I think back then was too young and too in awe to, like, question it, but now I'm reading it with a questioning mind, and I'm like, "Wait a minute."
Thank you for joining us. And until next time, as above, so below, blessed be.